Some actors have such great chemistry that they appear together in multiple movies. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. And now, after 25 years, a film reunites Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson from Anaconda. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Marry Me. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair for our annual Valentine Date Night episode is my amazing wife, Bethany. How are you, Bethany?
I'm lovely. How are you tonight?
I am good. It's Valentine's Day. It's our third year. We are going to talk about whether or not three's a charm. We talked about in last week's one shot how the last couple of years have gone. And we were possibly looking for something a little bit better for this year.
And we found something a little bit better.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into it. We, of course, talked about the Jennifer Lopez, Owen Wilson romantic comedy from last year called Marry Me, which some of you will probably be extremely surprised that this is inspired by, I should say.
But a little bit more inspired by than I think we originally thought.
Yeah, but it is inspired by a web comic, which they did release in actual graphic novel form. And we both read, there's 2 volumes. This one mainly focuses on volume 1.
Yes.
I doubt very much they would ever do anything with volume 2.
Volume 2 is a wild, hot mess.
Yeah, we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But let's talk about the webcomic a little more. It was created by Bobby Crosby and illustrated by Remy Isu Mokhtar. I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce that last name, Mokhtar. So Bobby Crosby got the idea in 2001, which he was watching a televised concert, and he was seeing fans holding up signs asking the singer to marry them. And he thought, what if that actually worked?
And that's exactly how the comic reads. Just a random fan in the audience says, marry me. And the pop star says, okay.
So they created the comic. It was published May 1st of 2007. And now in 2022, we got the movie. Although I think the movie started filming in 2020, I think is what I read.
But I think something like big happened in 2020
that
delayed a lot of processes for a lot of things.
Yeah. There were different ideas about possibly what the movie would be. At one point, Justin Timberlake was supposed to be the pop star, and it was going to be a female fan. What would you have thought about that? No? Yeah, Crosby didn't like it either. He said he thinks the storyline works better if it is a female pop star.
Yeah.
Writer John Rogers, who is also the writer behind Catwoman and Transformers,
okay.
asked Crosby about the rights at San Diego Comic-Con back in 2008, and then he's the one that optioned it in 2012.
Good for him.
Tammy Sager also contributed to the script. Now, to give a little bit better of a background than Catwoman and Transformers, Tammy Sager had written for TV. She wrote for 30 Rock, she wrote for Psych, and she wrote for How I Met Your Mother.
Okay, Okay.
Yeah. And then J-Lo became interested, and the ball really started rolling after that. J-Lo really took this as a passion project, from what I have read.
Yeah. That kind of, I mentioned in the previous episode that I listened to the commentary for The Wedding Planner when it came out, because it was like I had 3 DVDs, and that was one of them. And she was very attached to The Wedding Planner. It kind of seems like she actively seeks out things. And if she sees potential in them, like she works really hard to be a part of it. And I think now that she's more of an established actor, she's able to put a bit more fuel behind it than she was for other things.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you can tell she was passionate about and put her all into. But the film was released February 11th, 2022. Again, Valentine's movie from last year. It was released in theaters, but it was also released on Peacock.
Because of that little global thing that was happening in 2020.
And it was directed by Kat Coiro. Again, apologize for pronouncing that last name. Who Bethany and I have talked about more recently because she was the director of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law.
Yay!
We also found out in a little bit of research that she directed the pilot episode of Girls 5 Eva.
Which is the best.
Yeah, I know
10
you're a big
out
fan
of 10. Such a good show.
Yeah. But speaking of it being on Peacock, it has been, I think still today, a year later, the most streamed day-to-date title on Peacock.
Day to date.
Yeah,
so when it was released in theaters,
yes.
It was also released. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It being both released in theaters and Peacock at the same time, it is the most streamed title that Peacock has done that way.
I think you could audibly hear my brain start to try to work out the words you used in my head.
Okay. According to their records, over 6 million accounts streamed the movie.
That's pretty cool. We did not want to watch it on Peacock because I don't like watching it with commercials.
Well, it didn't have. I don't think this would have commercials when it first streamed. It might now, maybe. But anyway. But as of June of 2022, it became the #1 film on Amazon Prime and held that position for 2 weeks.
Good for it.
Yeah. In theaters, it was the first romantic comedy since 2014's About Last Night, for those who remember that movie, to be first place on Valentine's Day.
Aw, cute.
Yeah. So the first movie in 8 years to actually be a romantic comedy in first place on Valentine's Day.
Good for them.
There we go. All right, so let's get into the characters and break them down a little bit as to what we thought about some of these. Some of these we may not have much to say, but we'll start off with the main character, whose name is different from the comics. In the comics, it's Stacia, because it's Anastasia, so I think it's Stasia.
Stasia, yeah.
Yeah, in the comic. But in the movie, it is Kat Valdez, of course, as we mentioned already, played by Jennifer Lopez. And my question to you, and I think we kind of brought this up in the one shot as well, is Jennifer Lopez the new queen of romantic comedies?
I definitely think she's up there. She's one that when she's in a romantic comedy, I'm like, oh, I'm going to give that a shot. I enjoy those. I think she's up there in that pantheon of the Julia Roberts, the Sandra Bullock, the Meg Ryans, and now the Jennifer Lopez. Like, she does other things, and she does those things well. But I think I enjoy her romantic comedies a lot.
Yeah, so just to run through a list of her romantic comedies, it started with The Wedding Planner.
Whoop,
that was her first. Then we got Made in Manhattan. She then followed that up with the legendary Geely and Jersey Girl.
Okay, but she died in the first 10 minutes of Jersey Girl. I don't think that counts in her romantic comedy pantheon. Geely, I'll give you. Although, do they end up together in Geely?
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
I just know that was during the Ben Affleck run, the Bennifer.
Yeah.
Which never made sense to me because he ended up with another Jennifer. So why wouldn't you call them both Bennifer?
What? Okay, that if you and I had a couple name and then we divorced and you dated somebody else named Bethany, would it be appropriate for you to have the same couple name as that person?
Let's just go with Afpez. There we go. She also did. I don't know if you'd consider this a romantic comedy, but I did put it on this list. Shall We Dance? The one she did with Richard Gere.
Yeah.
And Susan Sarandon.
Yeah.
Then there was Monster-in-Law.
Uh-huh. That one's more on the com than the rom.
Which, funny enough, her name in that movie was Charlie.
Okay. Good for her.
There you go. And that'll come back around for those of you who haven't seen this movie. She was in an episode of How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, yeah. She was the girl version of Barney.
Yep. Then she had The Backup Plan.
Mm-hmm.
Then she had Marry Me, but more recently she's released another one called Shotgun Wedding.
Which I've heard is really good.
Yeah, which is on Amazon Prime, right? I think it's on Amazon Prime. But again, the character was Stasia in the comics. I think obviously being a pop star and big pop star, I think the only other connection they kind of make with the character is Stacia being always willing to donate to charity.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of scenes in the movie where she's talking about, oh, this is getting donated to charity, or,
Yeah.
oh, I love all these gifts. Let's donate them to charity.
Right.
You know, she doesn't really keep a lot of the stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an appropriate difference because I feel like the age difference between the two characters in the comic, you get the impression that Stasia's in her like mid to early 20s. And
more like a Britney Spears type character.
But like early Britney Spears.
Yeah.
And so she was very insecure. There was a lot of like like she had strong goals, but was insecure in herself, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Whereas it doesn't work quite as much with Jennifer Lopez. She's an older woman. She's a bit more established. She knows who she is. She's just been unlucky in love. And I actually really enjoyed kind of how they played on that for Jennifer Lopez. People have in real life made fun of all the relationships Jennifer Lopez has had. It's kind of been a punchline a lot of times.
And whereas in the comic, it was more of
she's impulsive. And
she was almost like having a mental breakdown at the moment. Whereas in the movie, it's just a snap judgment after.
She was being left, or she was at the altar situation and found out her betrothed, her, husband to be, was cheating on her.
Yeah.
And she's like in the middle of kind of like a mental breakdown, and then sees him and they get married. And he kind of also plays that of just like, you're seeing somebody who's having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
You want to step in and help them the best way you can. So that's why I said yes. Which
is kind of the same thing that the character says in the comic,
sort of, yeah.
Which we'll get into. So Owen Wilson is the man that she marries out of the audience. In the movie, he is Charlie Gilbert. In the comic, he's named Guy.
Yeah.
His name's Guy. I don't even think they give him a last name. I think his name's just Guy.
I can't remember. It's unimportant.
Yeah. Of course, this is not Owen Wilson's first foray into romantic comedies. He had previously been in 2 romantic comedies with Rachel McAdams, Wedding Crashers and Midnight in Paris.
Is Midnight in Paris really a romantic comedy?
I think there's aspects of comedy in it.
Yeah. Well, no. There's aspects of comedy, but it's not very romantic. Like, he's already in a relationship with Rachel McAdams. It's more the story of he walks through the streets of Paris in the middle of the night, and then he's transported back into the 20s, and he meets with, like, the famous
Hemingway
the famous expatriate authors that were living in Paris during that time.
Yeah. Well, those are his 2 romantic movies previous. Okay. And they were both with Rachel McAdams, like I said.
He has
Rachel
more
McAdams in some of those rare roles where she actually plays someone her age. But in the comic books, Guy is a guidance counselor. Funny enough, Guy is the guidance counselor.
Oh.
Whereas in this one, they make Charlie a math teacher. I kind of, not being biased because I am a math teacher, but I kind of liked him being a actual teacher because it gave us those classroom scenes.
Yes, I agree. I think for the purpose of the movie, it made more sense to have him interact with students, and then it gave that kind of like that end scene where they were at the math competition with his daughter and everything, and then her getting to interact with kids, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was really cute.
Yeah, the scenes of her dancing with the kids or some kind of are pretty good. Pretty I guess you would maybe later down the road, those are the ones that are put in the highlight reels, talking about Jennifer Lopez's career and whatnot. What did you think of their chemistry? Jennifer Lopez.
I don't think they had any chemistry.
Really?
No.
You didn't think so at all?
No, I thought it was a very cute movie. It was sweet, but I did not care one way or the other if they ended up together. They really didn't seem to have much chemistry with each other, but I mean, it was cute. I liked the story. Honestly, I half expected her to end up with the guy that left her at the altar, or at the very least, like, nobody.
Yeah, so let's talk about that guy. So this guy doesn't really exist in the comic.
Yeah.
There is an X in the comic named Christian, right?
Something like that.
I think it was Christian. But here it is Bastion, which part of me wonders if they're not playing off the Stacia from the comic, how it's short for Anastasia, and then his name's Bastion, which is short for Sebastian.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's played by, and again, I might butcher this name, Maluma, who is a Latin performer. I do think this was his first movie, in which he was live action, because he did voice Mariano in Encanto.
Which was, in case you don't have kids, that's Isabella's betrothed. Isabella's the sister that makes flowers. Yeah, and that's it.
But he played the other big pop star who was in a relationship with Kat, and they had this hit song called "Marry Me."
Yeah,
and it was all leading up to this wedding. Then you find out that he cheated on her, or was actively cheating on her, and that's where it all ends. His character comes back later, and I'll let you talk about this. He's never really portrayed as a good guy or a bad guy.
Right. He's just kind of there. He's not. Yeah. He makes he messes up. He cheats on her, but she seems to forgive him and move forward. And honestly, it seems like she wants to get back together with him. Seems like they had a good relationship with each other. To each their own when it comes to if it's your relationship and you decide to forgive somebody, that is kind of how you have to move through it and move forward. And I'm not saying what is right and what is wrong, but he never seems to be like actively malicious. He seems to support her, encourage her, like really bring her up. When she gets nominated for an award, which she makes a comment that she never gets nominated, he's so excited for her and wants to celebrate with her. And Owen Wilson's mad about it.
Well, and even when they perform at the award ceremony, he doesn't try to take advantage of the situation. It's a very cordial duet between the two of them. And it's kind of... I don't know how I felt about this character is what I'm trying to get across. What were your thoughts, though? So Owen Wilson is a year older than Jennifer Lopez.
Okay.
In real life.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson, I think, is 54. Jennifer Lopez, 53 or 55, 54, somewhere around that. But Maluma, who played Bastion, is 28.
Well, I believe at that time, or not that long ago, Jennifer Lopez was with someone who was a lot younger, like one of her backup dancers. Like several years ago, she was with
Casper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Who was a lot younger, but I mean, I don't see a problem with that. I feel like if you're emotionally mature enough,
I will say she doesn't look like she's 53. So
no, and he's well above consenting age. It's not like he's 17 and she's in her 40s or something. That's a different story. But he's of a consenting age. She is of a consenting age. They're both adults and they both love each other, or they seemed to, or they acted like it. They sang a really pretty song together. I know that much.
All right, let's swing back to probably the third biggest character after the two love interests, the two romantic leads. And that is actually the only character that is actually from the comic. Like,
I was
the letter from the comic.
Laramy and I both, we went, because before we watched the movie, we're like, there is no way that Guy's friend is going to make sense in this movie. And then the second we saw Sarah Silverman, I said, unless it's played by Sarah Silverman.
Yeah, so Sarah Silverman shows up, and then as soon as they call her Parker,
Laramy and I cheered.
Yeah, because Parker is like the catalyst of the comic book.
She's so funny and goofy, and just she's kind of the heart of the comic. Like she's the punchline. She's the reason people are reading it, honestly.
Yeah, and it's almost the same situation. She dumps her girlfriend, or her girlfriend dumps her, and she's got an extra ticket to this show. And so she asked Guy, her best friend,
Mm-hmm.
to go with her. There's no daughter in the comic. It's just the two of them. But like we also said, they're kind of in their 20s in the comic. So it made a little bit more sense. He didn't already have kids. But yeah, I mean, Parker's pretty much straight from the comic in every way. I mean, the way
she's a little bit more grounded than she is in the comic.
Well, yeah, the comic goes a little too cartoony, a little too on
which makes sense because it is a cartoon.
Yeah, because I mean, they have the scene where they go to Africa and then Parker runs however many miles.
Yeah, so stupid.
Yeah, and runs next to a giraffe that a monkey is riding. And how she wishes she was the monkey. Yeah, there's a lot of craziness with Parker. But I mean, the scenes where she's fighting off the paparazzi.
Yeah.
I mean, those are straight. When
she's just goofy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, like, it was literally, as soon as we saw Sarah Silverman, we went, oh, nope.
Yeah,
that is how they can bring
Parker
her
work
into this.
And they do. Again, there's no really other characters. I just mentioned the daughter. So the daughter's name is Lou, played by Chloe Coleman, who I recognized as Sophie from the movie My Spy with Dave Bautista. I also found out that she plays, and I don't know how to pronounce this because I'm not that big of an Avatar fan, but she plays the young Loak. And again, get on to me for not knowing how to pronounce that in Avatar, but she played...
We haven't seen the new Avatar.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's a character from the first Avatar, because I'm just not that big of a familiar with the Avatar
movies. We haven't
movies.
watched it since 2010.
They're not based on comic books, so I don't watch them all that much. But yeah, the new Avatar, The Way of the Water, she's adorable in this.
She is really cute.
Yeah, she's great in this. What were your thoughts, though, on... So they didn't do the thing where he's a widower. They did where he is separated. He's divorced from his wife. His wife doesn't play any part in this movie. She shows up once, has like 0 lines, like maybe says, all right, see you later, you know.
Really, the only way you know that is Lou's mom is that she takes Lou away.
Yeah, takes her from school while all this other stuff's going on with Charlie and all that. But yeah, she serves... What are your thoughts, though, of not including the mom in any way, shape, or form?
To be fair, like, I don't want a 2.5 hour long rom-com. Yeah. Nobody wants that. However, if it were I try to think about it in a situation, like real life scenario. And I feel like if it were me, I would have a problem with my daughter being around a stranger. Not only a stranger, but like a stranger that's going to thrust my child into a spotlight. Into the limelight.
Yeah.
I feel like there would have been some sort of conflict there. But there wasn't. It was a non-issue. Which, fine. I don't see how it would be, but okay. Yeah, that would be my only note, is I'm like, I feel like if you wanted to add some sort of conflict, it would be that her mom would have an issue with that sort of spotlight being on her daughter.
Yeah, that was my thing. It's just, especially what you said about her daughter now being, you know, I mean, in essence, followed by paparazzi with her dad, and
I mean, the paparazzi's outside of their house.
Yeah, so yeah, I just think there should have been something.
Yeah,
some scene or something.
Yeah.
And maybe had Kat ease her mind about how it was. I don't know. I just thought there'd be something. The only other characters that I felt were worthy to note is her manager, Colin, played by John Bradley, who many might know as Samwell Tarly from Game of Thrones. And there actually is a Game of Thrones reference. Like, they talk about the show. So I thought that was kind of funny that he's from Game of Thrones and they're talking about Game of Thrones.
I didn't realize he was from Game of Thrones. I'm the one person on the planet that's never seen it.
And then Bethany pointed out that her assistant, I guess you would say, Melissa, is played by
Michelle Buteau from The Circle, baby.
Who is the host of The Circle, which Bethany is a huge fan of.
I love The Circle.
What did you think about, I mean, in essence, these two characters were a split from the comic, which her manager who does everything for her and helps her with everything is her sister.
Right. I felt like they didn't quite know what they wanted to do with that, because it started off and it seems like Colin was going to be the main person of that duo.
Mm.
And then as the movie progressed, you stopped seeing Colin. It's like Colin dropped off the face of the planet, and then it was all Melissa. And I don't know if it was some sort of like COVID restriction thing, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Like why did both of them have to be there?
Yeah.
It really could have been one character.
It's like I said, which it is in the comic. Like
yes.
I said, they're essentially splitting a single character, her sister.
I think it would have been
stronger. Who had an interesting storyline because she's pregnant during the whole story and eventually gives birth. And that's her whole story. But yeah, and of these two characters, I really didn't see the point of Colin.
I didn't either. I'm glad you said it, not me.
Yeah, because Kat was clearly running her own show.
Yes.
Like, Kat was, making decisions. Kat was the one deciding this, that, and another. I mean, Colin was trying to be the voice of reason for some of the things. They did have the fact that Colin was kind of the go-to between Kat and Charlie for a lot of the movie before they really built their relationship.
But I feel like...
Whereas Melissa didn't like Charlie at all.
But I feel like some of that would have been... Some of the jokes about how Melissa is hard to get along with, or hard to impress, hard to get on her good side, it would have been stronger if she had been that main person the whole time.
Yeah.
Because really, you don't start getting that impression until they start making those comments. And then all of a sudden, she's the only one in the movie.
By the way, can we talk about how random it was that she ends up with the rival math teacher at the end of the movie?
But it's not even like in the movie. It's in the credits.
It's in the credits. It's so weird.
Who was played by the guy from the American version of Ghosts.
Yes.
Which we were very excited about.
Yeah, I can't remember the actor's name. Didn't write it down. But again, he doesn't... His character is a bit part at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we've gone through these characters, if they were to do a sequel, I think I already know the answer to this first question. Who would you want to see again? And who do you wish would get sprayed by Parker wielding a fire extinguisher?
So who I would want to see again is I would want to see more of Parker.
More Parker.
More Parker. And I think, just to go back, I think Colin, just get rid of him.
We don't really need Colin.
We didn't need him in the first movie. Nothing against him. He was funny.
Yeah.
He did a good job. It's just his character was redundant. And I felt like some of the stuff from... Like, Michelle was a stronger character. She brought more to it, especially towards the end of the movie. And it would have made her scenes make more sense in the end of the movie if it had been a continuation thing the whole movie.
Yeah. I'd also like to point out that she apparently had another assistant, which is the one Bastian sleeps with. And they introduce her like for a hot second at the beginning of the movie.
To be honest, when they showed that video of him like sleeping with the assistant.
Making out with her.
Yeah, I thought, is that Michelle Buteau? Because she had the curly hair and that's all you see.
Yeah.
And I had already forgotten about the other lady.
Yeah, that was the thing about it.
And I was like, that's it? That's going to be the end of Michelle Buteau? That's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, some of the minor characters definitely needed work. They either needed to retool some of these minor characters, or they needed to give a little bit more to some of these minor characters to just flesh them out a little bit more. Because you have these, like, for a romantic comedy, you've got Charlie, Kat, and Lou and Parker that are really these three-dimensional characters, and then you got all these smaller characters that are just flat. They're just so two-dimensional. I mean, there's even the other teacher at the school.
That I totally forgot about. The guy that's like the chorus teacher.
Yeah, the chorus teacher that he's in a couple of scenes. It's kind of funny, but you just kind of go, okay, why was he there? But you
forget about him until he shows up again.
In the end credit scene.
Or no, like at the dance. Like, because they had talked about they had talked at the beginning of the movie, and then he disappeared. You don't see anything about him, don't hear anything about him. And then they show up at the dance, and you're like, oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And then he shows up again at the garden. Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And then your husband mentions him in the middle of a podcast, and you go, oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, and then again, the guy from Ghosts who's in the big competition at the end, I'm like, maybe if they had established him earlier as being a rival of Charlie's,
I don't think you really needed that for that character.
I don't know. I just felt like you needed something.
I think if you had fleshed out like Bastian and Melissa, I think those two definitely needed to be fleshed out a bit more. I would have loved to have gotten more of Parker.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of them, I think it works. Again, we don't want a 2.5 hour long one.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm not saying really flesh out the math teacher competitor, but at least have a moment where Charlie either
makes a comment like, "Oh, that guy last year was such a jerk,"
or like they see him in a video, like being a jerk, celebrating. Where like I would just see him like if they're watching a video and his team has won. But then he gets in front of them and grabs the trophy and is holding the trophy up, taking all the...
I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think that's necessary, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily agree when it comes to that character.
Yeah,
I think you got plenty just in the little conversations But that actor's really good at kind of establishing a character quickly.
He establishes his role very quickly in that scene. But yeah... I mean, I'm thinking too much about the depth of a romantic comedy.
The depth of a character that's on screen for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just think we've seen romantic comedies that did a little bit better with the minor characters.
They've come a long way, but this was a fun. I'm glad we watched it. We'll get into how I feel overall towards the end.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.
All right, well, let's get into the moving panels. And again, this is loosely based off of the graphic novel. It really just takes the idea and does a completely different story, is what it does. But we'll break down some certain parts of it. So first off, we got the wedding itself,
right?
That happens on stage. The wedding is more realistic or more probable.
It makes more sense in the
movie.
Because it's established that she is going to marry Bastian.
Yes.
It's a big event.
So there's already an idea that there's going to be a wedding.
There's somebody there to marry them. They've got paperwork. They've got all the stuff laid out. She's got her dress. Like, it's not just random, sees a guy in the audience, says yes, brings him up on stage, and there just so happens to be a preacher.
Yeah, so in the comic, she's doing some performance where she's wearing a graduation cap and gown, but she's got like just a bra on up under it.
Like a bathing suit.
Because it's like opened. And then, for just some random reason, she sees Guy holding the Marry Me sign, which he's holding because Parker had to go to the bathroom.
Right. There is no song that's called Marry Me.
There's no song that's called... Well, was it?
No.
No. Parker had a crush
Parker had a huge crush on Stasia.
Yeah, that was it. And so that's why the Marry Me sign. And then, there's just a random priest, like, in his priest robes.
Like, with the collar.
Yeah. Like, a Catholic priest just shows up. It just happens to be there, ready to go.
At this concert.
Yeah. So, completely random. The other big thing with the wedding is in the movie, we actually kind of see the wedding happen
Yeah.
on stage, whereas in the comic, it cuts to Parker going to the bathroom.
In the bushes.
Yeah, she goes outside for some random reason. Goes outside and goes to the bathroom, and then it's happening on a monitor behind her, and she doesn't realize it until it's over, and then she sees it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is kind of weird when you're going to make a
weird,
comic,
but it's kind of funny.
and you're calling the comic "Marry Me," but you just take care of the wedding in 3 panels or whatever it was. So yeah, so the movie does a little bit better with them actually having a wedding. The other thing they do in the movie is they pretty much immediately say, yeah, they didn't actually get married.
Basically, well, there's a question throughout the comic.
In the comic, yeah.
The question in the comic is, were they legally married? That's the whole question, the whole comic.
Which is funny because they almost answer it immediately when she says, did you sign anything?
Yeah.
And she says no. And I'm like, well, then that ends the question. But yet they still kind of play on, are they legally married or not? Whereas in the movie, they almost immediately go, okay, yeah, it was just a publicity thing. But
no, she's legally married. They haven't filed the paperwork. In the movie, they're legally married.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
They haven't filed anything yet, was the thing. And she said, well, what if we don't? What if we file it? What if we go through with it?
Huh. I didn't remember that. But yeah, but again, like I said, so it's a little bit more realistic, a little bit more probable than what you have in the comic.
Although her thought process there is very similar to what is in the comic book of, she's like, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy. Well, what if I stay married to him? They won't think I'm crazy if I stay married to him.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely what it was in the comic. And yeah, the movie kind of plays on that a little bit. Where she's like, you know what, this is going to be the best way to handle this situation.
Yeah, we're just going to
stick with it. Yeah. There also is an element in the comic which they completely take care of in the movie of her dad being in control of her, quote unquote. So again, very Britney Spears style character here. But as soon as, almost immediately when you start learning more about Kat tells Charlie that her father's passed.
Yeah. Well, it also makes more sense with Stasia in the comic being younger. Makes more sense that she would have a fathager. Is that a dadager? Since they have momagers, maybe a dadager. Anyway, so it makes more sense that her dad would be her manager, that he would still feel like he's able to control her a bit more because he needs to not only be a manager, but also a parent. Whereas, Jennifer Lopez is an adult, like an established adult. She is.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Middle-aged, for
an older, Kat, the fact that she's older, she's like we've already talked about, she's more heavily involved in her career, in her persona. And again, it fit better with J-Lo playing the character.
Yes, and she has a confidence that the Stasia character did not have.
Oh, definitely. She's a lot more sure of herself.
Yeah.
She's a lot more independent.
I really liked J-Lo's character.
It was J-Lo. She was really just playing.
That's J-Lo in all movies.
Yeah.
But I still really liked her just being herself, and she was so confident. She was never this wishy. There's a little bit of the unsure of what she should do in this situation, but it was reasonable because she had just basically been left at the altar.
Yeah.
But she managed herself. She was strong, confident, successful, and very sure. And I enjoyed that aspect of her. It wasn't a lot of her trying to figure out who she was. She knew who she was. She was just trying to figure out how to fit this new person into her life.
Going back real quick to characters. So we talked about how Colin wasn't really needed. Melissa probably could have had a little bit different. I forgot. Is it Melissa or Michelle's the character?
Michelle is the actor. Melissa's the character.
Okay. About how there probably could have been a little bit of a change to her. But what are your thoughts about in the comic? There's Guy, there's Stacia, there's Parker, there's Stacey's sister, who I forgot her name in the comic. And then there's the bodyguard. Like, he's the fifth main character.
Yeah.
And there's no bodyguard character in this, which I only mention because the bodyguard kind of has this relationship with, like, his story kind of butts heads with Parker a lot.
Because they're like enemies.
Yeah, because,
honestly, it kind of plays into that Melissa character a little bit of being very protective, kind of gatekeeping. I don't know if gatekeeping's the best word to use, but gatekeeping Kat, trying to protect her emotional well-being as well as her career.
Yeah.
Because,
the bodyguard really worries that Parker is going to do something to Stacia.
I mean, if I would think so too. That woman was crazy. but I think Melissa kind of plays into that a little bit too, where she's very protective. She, she's very quick to put anyone in their place when it comes to Kat's like well-being.
Yeah.
So she's very like she hovers over Owen Wilson a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. Bag it, stack it, or trade it. So Bethany, I will let you go first. What do you say?
I'm gonna say stack it.
Okay.
It was cute. I enjoyed it. I'll probably watch it again one day if I'm feeling like, I enjoyed that. Let's give it another try. But I wasn't in love with it. It's not going to be something that I, watch over and over again. But it was cute.
Yeah. No, it's a stack it for me too. I mean, it's not the best romantic comedy I've ever seen, but I think it goes on a, list of romantic comedies to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a top 10 list. I don't know if it's a top 20 list.
Like I said, you disagreed with me, but I don't think she and Owen Wilson have very good chemistry with each other. The story itself is cute. I just don't think that Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez liked each other in that way.
Yeah. And the other, it has a lot of the romantic comedy tropes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the couple meeting in an unusual way.
A meet cute.
You've got the comedic best friend with Parker.
Mm-hmm.
You even have the got to get somewhere at the last minute.
Yeah.
They literally have J-Lo like running into an airport trying to buy a ticket, which I also thought was a funny scene when she tries to ask someone if she can buy the ticket off of them. And they go, that's illegal. And she, really? Like, because she's famous. She's never had to, she doesn't know that.
She's never had to worry about that.
Yeah.
And then Colin shows up again and you're like, oh, where have you been?
Yeah. But again, that whole getting somewhere in the last minute, I will say, even though, we're putting in a stack it and we've got some negatives about it, it's the best one we've done yet in terms of a Valentine's date movie.
Okay, fine.
Look, we weren't going ugh as much as we did during Scott Pilgrim.
I'm still so disappointed.
And we weren't just going wow as much as we did with Barbarella.
It wasn't even so much like wow as it was like what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Barbarella was just like it
was a trip.
It was a bad trip. And really I was trying to think of what to compare this movie to in terms of romantic movies, romantic comedies. And this is what I came up with, and I'm curious what you thought. It's Notting Hill.
Okay.
Meets Can't Buy Me Love.
Aww. Sure.
Because, it's got aspects of both.
I could see that.
It's got not only the Notting Hill aspect of the regular person dating the famous person, but it's also got the ideas of Can't Buy Me Love, of, hey, I need you for all this publicity stuff.
Yeah.
But, like he buys the popular girl and, buys her services. It's a hard way to say it that way.
Yeah, that's another problematic movie that doesn't hold up anymore.
But again, he, does it so that he can be popular. Whereas in this one, it's just she needs him for publicity reasons and all that to start off with.
Because Jimmy Fallon is really mean to her in this movie.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Fallon does play himself, yeah.
So mean to her in this movie.
Yeah, it is what it is. But, all right, so there you go. So, I'll ask you, was this a successful date night movie?
Yes, it was. It was very cute. It was sweet. We enjoyed it. Honestly, I really enjoyed reading the comic. Like, it got me all excited. I think I read through both of them in one day.
Yeah, so let's talk about the second one, because they're not going to make that into a movie.
No, that one's ridiculous.
If they do a Marry Me Too, it's going to have a completely different story.
It's going to have to, because the second one's ridiculous.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts of they called it Volume 2.
Yeah.
Well, the title was Marry Me Big Celebrity Wedding.
Yeah.
It's the name of the second one.
So in the second one, they actually are getting legally married.
Which they actually do at the end of the first one. You know they got married.
They just married.
Don't show because at the end of the first one, we even find out Stacy is pregnant. And they've been married. And the sister has had her child, and
she named it Parker.
Yeah. And that child's older. But then we get to the second one, and they decide to not only tell the story of their actual wedding, but then they do this weird flashback to show that actually Guy and Stacia had met years before on a movie set.
Yes, but neither of them remember it because Guy was very sick. He had like a crazy fever.
It was so weird.
And then he's dressed as a gorilla.
Yeah.
For the movie. He's in a gorilla costume.
It's like Ape Cop.
Something like that. And yeah, it's weird. But you know what? That's not even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is Parker's whole storyline.
Yeah.
Where you find out that, because I think the premise is they're telling how Parker and Guy met.
Yes.
And how they became best friends. And it's Parker is the babysitter of Guy's nephews.
Yeah.
And
he's Uncle Guy, which Parker thinks is hilarious.
Yes. And then she has to take Parker to she has to take Guy to the hospital because he's got a bad fever and he's hallucinating. And then a homeless man calls her his daughter.
Well, because she ends up
with a head injury.
And she gets taken.
And she can't remember who she is. And
the homeless guy claims her as his daughter, calls her Turtle.
Because the only thing she can eat are turtles.
Yeah.
It's very weird. And then it come to find out that there actually was a girl named Turtle.
Who looked exactly like Parker.
Yes.
Although Parker says she doesn't see it.
Although she died.
But they look exactly the same.
And then,
meanwhile, someone is threatening Stacia's life.
Yes. So there's been a threat that she will be murdered at the altar.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. It just keeps getting weirder. And then eventually they end that backstory. Then come to find out that during this time, Turtle has taken the place of Parker, and Turtle is the one who's making the threats and goes to kill Stacia
during the wedding. And then they do like a Jedi mind trick on Turtle to make her think that she is Parker. Yeah. And she kills herself. So yeah, they have Parker and Turtle in the scene together, and they do kind of the, which one's which? And then they do this whole, what if she's actually Turtle who just thinks she's Parker?
What if Parker's brainwashed Turtle to think that she's Parker? And then Turtle's like, then I'm Parker? Oh no, then I have to kill myself.
Yeah, and it gets really weird. And then it turns out that the homeless guy really is Parker's father.
Yeah.
And it's really, really out there, the second one.
It's a good time, though. I would highly recommend you read it.
Yeah, if you can find it. I will say that when I found them, it was a deep dive. I think I found them on eBay and was able to get the copies I got. So I don't know how readily available they are out there to read. I don't even think they're still available on the website that they were originally on. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, if you get the chance, I mean, they're a fun read. They're a quick read.
Oh yeah.
So I would take a look at it, but let's go ahead and wrap it up for today. This ends our annual Valentine's Day date night movie review. So for Valentine's Day, which is actually tomorrow, for Valentine's Day, you've got a good choice here. Whether you have the ability to go out and buy it or rent it, or if you've got Peacock, you can see it on Peacock or Amazon Prime. It's on Amazon Prime. So yeah, I think we still recommend Marry Me as a date night movie.
It's cute.
As one to give a shot, cuddle up with, and watch. But we'll end it here, and have a happy Valentine's Day. And I will go ahead and wish my lovely bride a happy Valentine's Day as well.
Marry me, say yes. Marry me,
already
say
did.
yes.
Already did. All right. So enjoy your Valentine's Day. But for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.